Hello? Can you hear me? Hang on. I'll take you somewhere safe.
A single dad's split-second decision during a deadly storm saves a stranger's life. Years later, when he faces losing everything in court, that stranger returns as an elite billionaire lawyer. What happens next will restore your faith in humanity forever. Welcome to Life in Stories, where extraordinary tales of human connection come alive. If you believe in the power of kindness and second chances, hit subscribe and join our journey. The rain hammered against the windshield like bullets. Michael Luke gripped the steering wheel of his old pickup truck, squinting through the storm that had turned downtown Seattle into a watery blur. It was supposed to be a quick run to the auto parts store, but the weather had other plans. Michael wasn't the kind of man who complained about storms, or much of anything, really. At 35, he'd already weathered plenty. The small photo taped to his dashboard showed why he kept going. Emma, 8 years old with her mother's smile, and Lily, 6, with his stubborn chin. His girls. His world. His hands told his story better than words ever could. Calloused from years of honest work at Luke's Auto Repair, the shop his father had started 40 years ago. Oil stains that never quite washed out. A simple gold band on his left hand that he still couldn't bring himself to remove. 3 years after cancer took Rachel. The shop wasn't much to look at, a converted garage on the outskirts of Chinatown, with a hand-painted sign that needed touching up. But it was theirs. Well, mostly the bank's, but Michael was working on that. 60-hour weeks meant the girls spent too much time at Mrs. Rodriguez's next door, but it also meant keeping the lights on and food on the table. Daddy fixes everything, Lily had told her kindergarten class during career day. If only that were true. He couldn't fix the empty chair at dinner. Couldn't fix Emma's nightmares. Couldn't fix the stack of bills that grew faster than his income. But he could fix cars. And he could be there, really there, when his girls needed him. Soccer games, school plays, bedtime stories about brave princesses who saved kingdoms. He'd learned to braid hair from YouTube videos and pack lunches with notes that said, "I love you," in different ways. Across town, in a glass tower that scraped the Seattle sky, Sarah Winters was drowning in a different kind of storm. 28 years old and already being groomed to take over Winters and Associates, the law firm her grandfather had built into a Pacific Northwest powerhouse. Her office on the 40th floor was larger than Michael's entire shop. Original art on the walls. A view that stretched to Mount Rainier on clear days. Not that she had time to look. Billable hours were her Bible. Corporate mergers her daily bread. The Winters name opened doors, but Sarah was determined to prove she belonged there on merit, not birthright. Harvard Law summa cum laude. Law Review editor. Clerkship with a Supreme Court justice. She checked every box, exceeded every expectation. Yet something felt hollow. Her father called it privileged guilt. Her mother called it a phase. Sarah called it a gnawing sense that winning cases for Fortune 500 companies wasn't why she'd fallen in love with the law. She'd wanted to be Atticus Finch, not Gordon Gekko. The storm that night matched her mood. Another victory in court that afternoon. Helping a tech giant avoid environmental penalties on a technicality. Legally brilliant. Morally. She pushed the thought away and focused on the rain streaming down her office windows. Michael had just turned onto Pine Street when he saw it happen. A figure in a dark coat, hunched against the rain, stepping off the curb. The city bus hydroplaning. Time slowing to a crawl. His body moved before his mind caught up. Abandoning his truck in the middle of the street, he lunged forward. His work boots slipped on the wet pavement, but momentum carried him. His hands found fabric, pulled hard. They tumbled together onto the sidewalk as the bus roared past, spraying them with a wall of water. For a moment, they just lay there, breathing hard, rain pelting their faces. Are you okay? Michael helped the woman sit up. She was young, professional-looking despite being soaked through. Her hands shook as she pushed wet hair from her face. I think so. I didn't see. Sarah's voice trembled. The bus had missed her by inches. Without this stranger she'd be. She couldn't finish the thought. Easy. Just breathe. Michael's voice was calm, steady. He helped her to her feet, noticed she'd lost a shoe in the chaos. Without hesitation, he shrugged off his jacket and held it over her head. There's a coffee shop right there. Let's get you inside. 20 minutes later, Sarah sat across from him, wrapped in a borrowed blanket, sipping tea with hands that had finally stopped shaking. Michael had bought her the tea, waving off her protests. Up close, she could see the kindness in his eyes, the way he kept checking if she was really okay. I don't know how to thank you, she said. You saved my life. Michael shrugged, uncomfortable with gratitude. Anyone would have done the same. No, Sarah said firmly. They wouldn't have. Most people would have honked their horn or yelled. You risked yourself for a stranger. She reached for her purse, wanting to give him something, anything. A reward. Her business card. But Michael was already standing. Take care of yourself, he said simply. And maybe look both ways next time, even in the rain. A small smile softened the words. Before Sarah could respond, he was gone, disappearing back into the storm. She didn't even know his name, but she'd never forget his face, or the feeling of being pulled back from the edge of disaster by a stranger's selfless act. 5 years had a way of changing everything and nothing at all. Michael's girls were teenagers now. Emma 13 and moody, Lily 11 and still believing her dad could fix the world. The shop was still standing, though barely. The lawsuit had come out of nowhere. A customer claiming a brake job had failed, causing an accident. Security footage that might have cleared Michael had mysteriously disappeared. The customer happened to be connected to a city councilman who had tried to buy Michael's property last year. The shop sat on land now worth millions as the neighborhood gentrified around it. Michael knew it was a setup, but knowing and proving were different things. His insurance had lapsed during a tough month when he'd had to choose between premiums and Emma's dental work. The plaintiff was demanding $2 million. Might as well have been $2 billion. It's David versus Goliath, his court-appointed lawyer had said. And you're out of stones. The lawyer, fresh out of law school and overwhelmed with cases, had basically told him to settle. Give up the shop. Declare bankruptcy. Start over. Start over. As if it were that simple. As if he could just walk away from his father's legacy, from the place where Emma had taken her first steps, where Lily still did homework at the same desk Michael had used as a kid. He'd sold everything he could. His truck. Rachel's jewelry. That had been the hardest. Borrowed from friends who couldn't afford to lend. None of it was enough for a real lawyer. The trial was in 3 days. Michael sat in the shop after hours, surrounded by the ghosts of better times. The girls were at Mrs. Rodriguez's, doing homework. He'd told them everything would be fine. Another thing he couldn't fix. The woman who walked into Luke's auto repair the next morning looked like she'd taken a wrong turn from a different world. Sarah Winters, though Michael didn't know her name yet, wore a suit that probably cost more than he made in a month. Her heels clicked on the concrete floor with purpose. Mr. Luke. I'm Sarah Winters. I'll be representing you in court. Michael looked up from the engine he'd been staring at without seeing. I think there's been a mistake. I can't afford. Pro bono, Sarah interrupted. I understand you're facing a lawsuit that threatens your business. Lady, I appreciate it, but I don't take charity. Pride was all he had left. It's not charity. Sarah's voice was firm. I've reviewed your case. What's happening to you is wrong. I specialize in corporate law, but I'm taking a sabbatical from my firm to handle cases like yours. Cases that matter. Something about her seemed familiar, but Michael couldn't place it. Why me? Because everyone deserves quality representation, Sarah said simply. Now, I need you to tell me everything. Don't leave out any detail, no matter how small. For the next 3 hours, Sarah listened. She asked questions that his previous lawyer hadn't thought of. She took notes in neat handwriting, occasionally pausing to think, her brow furrowed in concentration. As Michael talked, Sarah studied him. The way he unconsciously straightened a photo of his daughters when he mentioned them. How his hands gestured when he described the shop's history. The quiet dignity in how he discussed his wife's death. His voice steady but his eyes revealing old pain. Something nagged at her. A memory just out of reach. It wasn't until he mentioned always trying to help people, even when he couldn't afford to, that it clicked. The storm, she said suddenly. Michael paused mid-sentence. What? 5 years ago. Pine Street. The bus. Sarah's voice was barely above a whisper. That was you. The recognition hit them both like a physical force. Michael saw it now, the same eyes, older and more confident, but unmistakably the woman he'd pulled from death's path. I looked for you, Sarah admitted. I went back to that corner for weeks, hoping to see you again. I wanted to thank you properly, too. She paused, struggling with emotion. You saved my life, and I didn't even know your name. It was nothing, Michael said automatically. Stop. Sarah's voice was sharp. Stop diminishing what you did. You risked your life for a stranger. Do you know how rare that is? How precious? She stood, pacing now, energy crackling around her. I've spent 5 years in corporate law, making rich people richer. I've won cases I'm not proud of, helped companies I don't believe in. But I've never forgotten that night. Never forgotten that there are people like you in the world. That's why you're here. To pay back some debt. Michael's voice was careful. No. Sarah turned to face him. I'm here because it's right. But knowing it's you, that makes it personal. And trust me, Mr. Luke, you want me taking this personally. The courtroom transformation was something to behold. Sarah Winters in her element was a force of nature. Where Michael's previous lawyer had been apologetic, she was commanding. Where he'd been reactive, she was 10 steps ahead. She'd spent 72 hours dissecting every aspect of the case. Found inconsistencies in the plaintiff's story. Tracked down witnesses the police had somehow missed. Most importantly, she'd uncovered a paper trail linking the plaintiff to the councilman's development company. Your Honor, Sarah's voice rang clear. What we have here is not a case of negligence, but a coordinated attempt to force my client from his property through fraudulent litigation. The plaintiff's lawyers, smug at first, grew increasingly uncomfortable as Sarah systematically destroyed their case. She had depositions they didn't know existed. Security footage from a business across the street they'd overlooked. Financial records that painted a damning picture. But it was more than just legal brilliance. It was the passion behind it. When Sarah spoke about Michael's character, about the shop's role in the community, about a man raising 2 daughters alone while keeping his father's legacy alive, the courtroom listened. Mr. Luke represents everything that's right about our community, she said in closing. He's the neighbor who'll fix your car on credit when times are tough. The single father who never misses a school event despite working 60-hour weeks. The man who, 5 years ago, risked his life to save a stranger in a storm. She paused, letting that sink in. That stranger was me. And if this court allows this travesty to proceed, we're not just failing Mr. Luke. We're failing the very principles of justice this building represents. The verdict was unanimous. Not only was Michael cleared, but the judge recommended investigation into the plaintiff and councilman for conspiracy and fraud. The courtroom erupted as the gavel fell. Michael sat stunned as people congratulated him. His girls, who Sarah had insisted attend, ran to hug him. But his eyes found Sarah, standing quietly to the side, a small smile on her face. Later, after the crowds had dispersed, they sat in the coffee shop where he'd brought her 5 years ago. Full circle. "I don't know how to thank you," Michael said, unconsciously echoing her words from that night. "You already did," Sarah replied. "5 years ago you showed me what real courage looks like. You changed my life that night more than you know. I just pulled you out of the way of a bus." "No." Sarah leaned forward. "You showed me that doing the right thing matters. That helping people matters. I went into law to make a difference, but somewhere along the way I lost that. You helped me find it again." She slid a business card across the table. Not the Winters and Associates card, but something new. The Beacon Legal Clinic. "I'm starting next month. Free legal services for people who can't afford representation. I was hoping maybe you'd be on our board of advisors." Michael looked at the card, then at Sarah. "You're giving up corporate law?" "I'm trading it for something better. For cases that matter. For clients like you." She smiled. "Turns out saving one life can ripple out in ways you never expect." 6 months later, the Beacon Legal Clinic occupied a renovated building 3 blocks from Luke's Auto Repair. The opening ceremony was packed. Community members, local officials, and reporters drawn by the story of the billionaire lawyer who'd given up everything to serve those with nothing. Michael stood with his daughters, watching Sarah cut the ribbon. Emma and Lily had made a banner. "Heroes help heroes." It hung behind the podium, slightly crooked but perfect. In her speech, Sarah talked about second chances and the power of kindness. About how one moment of selfless action could change the trajectory of multiple lives. She didn't mention Michael by name, but her eyes found his in the crowd. The clinic would go on to help thousands. Michael joined the board, offering not just advice but teaching job skills to clients getting back on their feet. His shop became a training ground for people needing second chances. Emma, inspired by Sarah, would eventually pursue law herself. Lily would take over the shop, modernizing it while keeping its heart intact. The building that someone had tried to steal through lies became a cornerstone of a revitalized community. But on that opening day, none of that was certain yet. There was just a mechanic and a lawyer, proof that kindness is never wasted, that courage is contagious, and that sometimes saving one life can echo through time in ways we never imagine. The rain had started again, gentle this time. Michael and Sarah stood under the clinic's awning, watching the drops fall. "No storms today," Sarah said. "No," Michael agreed. "But if there were," she smiled, "I'd know to look both ways. And that if I didn't, someone would be there to help." "Always," he said simply. And in that word was everything. The promise that kindness creates, the bonds that gratitude forges, and the truth that no good deed, however small it seems, is ever truly finished. It ripples outward, touching lives in ways we may never see but that make all the difference in the world. The city moved around them, full of strangers who might one day need saving, or who might do the saving themselves. Each one a potential story of connection, of second chances, of the beautiful, unpredictable ways that human lives intertwine. After all, heroes don't always wear capes. Sometimes they wear oil-stained coveralls. Sometimes they wear power suits. And sometimes in the most important moments, they're simply human beings who choose to help, not because they have to, but because it's right. That's the most powerful force in any storm. The choice to reach out, to pull someone back from the edge, to believe that every life matters and every kindness counts. The rain continued to fall, But inside,